Morning. Welcome to this special meeting of Westminster's Mayor and Common Council. During the public health emergency, we'll be conducting our meetings virtually, and they will be available streamed live on the city's Facebook page. Copies of today's agenda and the entire information packet that the council will be using are available online on the city's website. We have no unfinished business of which I'm aware. Is there any unfinished business? Hearing none, we have two items of new business. And we'll begin with the first one, approval of Warner Construction Contract Change Order number 17. And for that, we have Ms. Matthews and Mr. Glass.
Thank you, President Pecoraro. Before you this morning is change order number 17 to the city's contract with Warner Construction. As noted in the staff memo, change order number 17 is comprised of three separate items. Existing ventilator removal and roof patch, existing supply duct replacement, and installation of an RPZ backflow valve and floor drain. Further description of these items is available both in the staff memo as well as in the background materials, specifically the change order and the recommendation letter from our project architect, Camp Brunette. As noted in the staff memo, there was some question as to whether or not the city might be able to negotiate with the county to avoid installation of the RPZ backflow valve and floor drain. Mr. Glass's discussions with the county were still pending as of the date of the staff memo and the issuance of the agenda packet. Mr. Glass did inform me this morning that he has spoken to the county Bureau of Permits and Inspections, and the city will be required to install the backflow valve and floor drain, which obviously is disappointing. I don't know, Mr. Glass, is there anything you'd like to add? We also have John Brunette, the project architect, on the call. He's the admin 10 that you're seeing.
Mr. Glass, anything you can add to that?
So the reason for the need of this change order for the RPZ is that, and where the confusion was, I think from the beginning, was that the drawings were submitted to the county for review, but a portion of the drawings were, I'll stop myself from saying incomplete, but there was a portion of the project that was design build, and that was for the fire protection sprinkler system. So at the time the county got the drawings to approve, there wasn't a design for the sprinkler system and fire protection, because again, that was being handled as a design build. So the county approved the drawings with a double check, not knowing that there was going to be an outside connection for the fire department. Now that we know, well, so time progressed, and we began the design, obviously, for fire protection and the sprinkler system, and lo and behold, there was a fire department connection, and the county regulations, national regulations, actually require the RPZ stands for reduced pressure zone backflow preventer, and it comes with a have to have a floor drain for that as well, because in the event that they activate, there's water goes everywhere. So that's where the confusion was, and we got that worked out. Because my initial thought was if the county had approved the drawings as they were, and but now came back with something different, that we may have an argument there, but that was not the case, and so we will be required to install the RPZ.
Mr. Brunette, is there anything you'd like to add since you're on the call to what Mr. Glass has shared already?
Well, the only thing I would like to add would be the fact that this was a design build in terms of the sprinkler system, and the contractor is basically responsible for that. They engaged a fire protection company that submitted plans for permits for just the sprinkler system. So that went through the county as well. And unfortunately, this element wasn't picked up in the review process, and that's not really the county's responsibility to pick up those little items. Nevertheless, we hope that they would at least check a significant issue like the sprinkler riser. So it's kind of a situation where the system failed us in terms of the checks and balances that occur, not only through going through 2 permit processes where we got information back that seemed to indicate we were good to go with our drawings, which didn't indicate the double check valve. In the code, there's actually 4 options of that assembly that you can go with in the event that there's a fire department connection in that system. Then you do have to go with this assembly that has the pressure reducer. But nevertheless, our drawings indicated a double check. The initial review came back and indicated a double check was what we needed. And when I think it was the chief of the plumbing inspection came through and did his inspection recently, almost towards the end of the project, he picked up that we need this pressure reducing assembly. So that's where we are now.
Matthews, anything else that you all want to say about this before we take it up?
No, thank you, Councilmember Pecoraro.
All right. So our usual process is that we get a motion just to get the conversation started. May I have a motion to approve change order number 17?
I'll make a motion to approve.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second. Motion by Ms. Gilbert and a second by Mr. Yingling. So who would like to start? Any
Mr. President.
discussion?
Yeah, Mr. President, I have a question. So obviously, this is something that we probably don't have much choice on in terms of approving it or not, but I guess my question is this. Had we submitted the plans initially that included the need for this, or had the county caught it as per the comments by the architect? I'm sorry, is it Mr. Burnett? Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. By Mr. Burnett. Had the county caught it through the review process, obviously I'm under the assumption it still would have been required one way or the other, that wouldn't have changed anything. But I guess my question then is, would the cost be different had this been done at the appropriate time, as opposed to now coming out last minute and forcing us to rush into this meeting to have to get it done? I have to assume maybe, but I don't know. I don't want to make that assumption. So that's my question: is there a cost difference because this is being added on last minute?
Well, it's a change in the assembly that's being installed. Our drawings from the get-go showed the double check, and we got the plans review comment that came back and said that we needed a double check, so that kind of confirmed it. There's a replacement of the assembly, so that cost is an additional cost. Yes, we're basically throwing away a double check assembly and installing this assembly that has the pressure reducing functionality to it. And that cost, I just looked up on the internet, the cost of a 4-inch pressure reducing assembly. It's about $3,500 just for the physical piece of equipment.
So we bought a double check. I'm sorry, may I continue, Mr. President?
Please go ahead.
So we bought a double check assembly to be built into the system that we now can't use, and we have to go back and buy another double check assembly that has a pressure reducing capability that the other one didn't have. Is that correct?
Yes, well, it's not called a double check. It's just a pressure reducing assembly.
Yeah, that's okay. I don't really care about what it's called. What my question is that we bought something and now we've got to go buy something else because someone clearly didn't do what they're supposed to do, that we're relying on to be experts. I don't know if that's you or somebody in the contractor's house, but at the end of the day, we're relying on you guys to do this. And if we had to go back and buy it twice, I don't see how we're on the hook for that. Now, if there's some of this cost, the $16,000 cost that we were going to bear either way, fine. That's, we would have borne it up front. We would have known about it, or we're finding out about it now. But if this change order includes money that was somebody not catching something or overlooking or anything like that, I have an issue with us being on the hook for that portion of it. That's why we have experts. That's why we have folks that we're paying to look out for things like that.
Well, absolutely. And I think the culpability in this situation is just spread across multiple parties. I mean, we put in my engineer specified the double check. The county comes back with their permit review and says, we want a double check. And then inspections are made along the way after the contractor who's supposed to be designing the sprinkler system submits specific sprinkler layouts that indicate the double check again. They call it a backflow preventer, but that's one and the same thing pretty much. And the county reviews that and approves it again. So yeah, there's culpability, but I just don't know where you can point to all the checks and balances along the way where that failure occurred. It was kind of in multiple situations.
So, and how much is that amount that we're talking about? Is it just that part replacement, or is it the entire $16,000?
Well, the collateral damage in this pressure relief is that it has a blow off, so that if the pressure builds up, it's going to dump water on the floor. So we can't have the incoming water service dumping water on the floor if that were to actually happen.
I understand.
Potential
So
for
the other
that-
unit wouldn't have done that. It would have been a sealed system and it wouldn't pour water out. So now we've got to put a drain in addition to it because it would pour water out. But I would assume if this was caught, we would have had to put that drain in even from the beginning, either way. So I'm not looking, look, at the end of the day, I'm sure we're going to have to pay for this and we're probably going to have to pay for most of it. But I'd like to have a conversation with whoever should have caught this, that's the expert, and have them have some responsibility, at least for the cost of replacing that valve that you're saying is about $3,500 extra dollars. So that I guess that's my only comment, Mr. President, is, you know, I get it. I understand things change, but you know, I think we need to be going back and looking at recouping at least the cost of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cavacci, and Mr. Yingling.
I actually 100% agree with Mr. Cavacci for what it's worth. You know, somebody needs to be held accountable. And I understand that our architect's saying, well, it's spread over, you know, a bunch of people. So I don't know who gets to decide who's held accountable or not. But I 100% agree. I mean, this is the cost of this shouldn't be laid at our feet, you know.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Yingling. Ms. Gilbert.
Yeah, I'm definitely agreeing with Councilman Cavacci and Councilman Yingling, but I have a question. So it doesn't sound like it's totally the responsibility of the contractor. Did they not know what was required or should have been required? I'm a little confused as to why it went through so many different people and nobody caught this. And then my second part of that question is, so we paid for it in the first place also many months ago, and now we're repaying another amount. It sounds like we're just repaying for the same thing all over again that we should have done right the first time. So is there any way that we can subtract off what we've already paid and have that not be our portion of the responsibility of this change?
Well, I think that's certainly, you know, part of what we're talking about here. We've got a couple of issues here. One is, you know, is that, you know, clearly a mistake was made here, which, you know, we need to rectify in order to have the building work the way we want it to. So we've got to, so as Mr. Cavacci said, you know, it's something that we've got to go ahead and do. The second part of this is somebody made a mistake and we'd like to know who was responsible, because it doesn't sound like it was the city, and you know, the city ought not to have to, you know, pay the entire cost of this mistake. The third thing to me, which is actually a lot more concerning than the $3,500, which is not an insignificant amount of money, but nonetheless, in terms of the whole project is not huge. But this is now costing us 14 days on our delivery, which concerns me a great deal. You know, we had hoped to move this along. You know, we've got a arrangement with our current landlord, you know, to be able to be in the building. It's going to take time to get people moved. You know, I'm concerned about this 14 days. There's also a cost involved in, you know, the delay on this, that usually the contractors bear when they're going over the limit. So I think we need to address that as well. So to me, those are the concerns. I mean, I think we've got to do it, but I think somebody's responsible, and we ought to somebody ought to acknowledge that, and we got to figure out some kind of cost sharing. But third, we're adding 2 weeks to the construction schedule here, which is a lot of time at this point. Ms. Matthews, is that something that's been discussed at all?
This all came up fairly late last week. I think Mr. Glass and I both hear what you're saying. I think Mr. Brunette does as well. I think we can kind of regroup later today and kind of talk about this further.
Okay, and I think we're going to need an answer on that one.
Mr. President,
Mr. Kavachi.
I didn't realize this was delaying us 2 weeks. I'm sure it's somewhere in the documents you received.
It is. It's at the end of the memo.
I apologize.
That's all right.
You're spot on. There's a cost every single day that we're occupying that other building. That's an easily calculated cost as to what those 14 days are costing us. And without a doubt, we need to be going back and figuring out who's responsible for that. And that needs to be recouped by us as well as any other material or labor costs that we can recoup as well. That's a great catch, Mr. President. I'm sorry I didn't see that.
I'm actually looking at it and I don't see it either.
It's in the memo. It's there.
It's under the project impact in the staff memo.
Okay.
Mr. Brunette, a question for you. Understandably, the mayor and common council have concerns, but there's only so much time we can afford to go back and forth on this. Is an option to basically direct Warner to do this work under our construction change directive while we kind of talk about liability, so that the city's
I
not
have to,
waiting away
the
its
technical
right.
side of that, generally there should be the ability for us to do that. I'd have to go back and look at the general conditions that were written.
Okay.
This one was unique where your general conditions applied to it. So I'd have to double check on that.
And for the mayor and common council's benefit, a construction change directive basically means the contractor is ordered to proceed with the work pending resolution of kind of cost and other factors.
Well, is it reasonable for us to approve this with the understanding that the city does not accept full responsibility for the cost of this, and that we want to see the additional construction schedule time addressed as well?
Mr.
Or
Brunette?
does that make it difficult to?
Well, I'll go back to Warner and discuss not only the time delay, but the cost of the work itself, and see if we can parcel out what's an expense that would have been incurred had we installed the pressure reducing assembly to begin with versus where we are today.
And I think if I can just sort of express what I think is probably the mood of the council as we get towards the end of the contract, is that we understood going into this that there were some things about the building that we didn't know because of what we were able to see, or rather what we weren't able to see prior to purchasing it and getting into this. So we expected there were going to be some things that were going to happen that were going to be that we weren't going to foresee. And I think we've gone along with those things without any real trouble. But this is the kind of thing where somebody should have caught this, and now it's adding. We're all anticipating getting into the building. I know the employees are anxious to be able to move, and this is the kind of thing that seems a little harder to just easily go along with without somebody having to address some responsibility for it. So with that said, does anybody else have any other comments on this?
So it
Before we
it
take
may
a
be,
vote, Mr. Kavachi?
Yeah, Mr. President, I think we need to amend our amend the motion.
Motion?
Miss Matthews, what was the term that you used that is common in this situation?
Oh, it was a construction change directive.
So I think we need to amend it to make this a construction change directive so that it will allow us to go back and potentially try to recoup some of the costs that we're potentially going to incur here, as well as those 14 days. That's what that would do, correct?
Yes, if I may, maybe the motion could be that we're free to proceed with the existing ventilator removal and roof patch and the supply duct replacement as presented in change order 17, because Jeff or John can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe those items are in dispute at all. And then as part of your motion, direct staff and the project architect to either issue a construction change directive or take other actions necessary to mitigate the city's cost on the RPZ backflow valve.
So the only thing I think is worth noting is the 14 days are it's a culmination of all three items. It's not just only the RPZ. So clearly, some of it's going to be concurrent. Maybe all of it will be concurrent. I don't know. So even if the RPZ is taken out, I don't think we're going to end up with a zero extension of time. So that probably, just so everybody understands that.
So, Mr. President, I think that's fair. And, I think that the duct is a perfect example of one of the things you were referring to earlier. Yeah, we hate eating the $15,000, but that's an item you can't see till you get into it. So that one, I think we just have to bite the bullet on. But anyway, Mr. President, I'll amend the motion to reflect Ms. Matthews' comments, if that's acceptable.
That's acceptable. Any other comments on this?
Yeah, Mr. President,
Mr. Mayor?
I think the one piece was covered pretty thoroughly by everybody, but I did want to ask a couple of questions about the duct. Obviously, that has to be done. But I guess my two questions are: for $15,000, what's the length of the duct work that needs to be addressed, and why? I do feel like a duct like this, I feel like it would have been caught a lot sooner than this late in the game. I just like to know why it's so late in the game, and why, and how large of a piece it is.
I don't think I could give you a specific right this minute. I'd have to get back to you on those details. The why, as far as why is it being picked up right now, that's a good question, and I gotta find that out.
I just feel like that's something that you would probably notice fairly early in the, when everything was kind of getting demoed. I know we're wrapping things up, so, I think, again, like Council President said, we knew there was going to be stuff we were going to uncover, but faulty duct work the last hour seemed a little, I just don't know why we're uncovering that right now. And also, $15,000 usually buys a pretty decent length of duct. So,
What is the main duct running up the shaft? I believe that's the duct that we're talking about.
That's my understanding, John.
So it's actually fairly significant, rather than length of duct, because this is quite sizable as well. The proposal from the sheet metal mechanic has it down as in pounds of sheet metal, and it's 700 pounds of galvanized metal that's going to be bent into the correct shape. And then along with that is 450 feet of acoustical liner. So it is a significant amount. And I think the reason it was has taken this long is the contractor was tying into that duct with some other work that I think was kind of across the way there in the one seminar room, and that's when it was discovered then.
All right. Anything else on this? Mr. Mayor, do you have any other questions?
that was it, Mr. President. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, I think we all know where we are on this, so I guess we're ready for a vote. All those in favor of the motion as modified with Ms. Matthews' language, please say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. The ayes seem to have it, and the ayes have it. And the change order is approved with the modifications on as Ms. Matthews outlined. So thank you all very much for that. The next item of business is to you, Mr. Kavachi.
Sorry, I had to get myself unmuted. Let me get that
Sorry.
stuff back up in front of me. I'm sorry. I closed it when I was looking at the other documents. Okay. I'd like to make a motion, Mr. President, to go into a closed session under the statutory authority to close sessions under the Maryland Annotated Code General Provisions 3-305B to consider the acquisition of real property for a public purpose and matters directly related thereto, and to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice on a legal matter. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Kavachi. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second from Mr. Yingling. So it's a motion by Mr. Kavachi and a second by Mr. Yingling. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. The ayes seem to have it, the ayes have it. And we will now go into a closed session at the conclusion of this conversation. So let's see. I think that was, we're not coming back into this, are we? Ms. Matthews?
No, we are not.
All right, great. So then I will just say that, before we adjourn this meeting to go into the session, the final item is citizens' comments. This is a time when we invite the public to address the mayor and council on any issues that pertain to this agenda or any other city issues. Because we can't allow live comments easily online during these meetings, we have invited the public to send comments to our city clerk at comments@westgov.com. At this time in every meeting, I will read out all of the comments we have received. I have received no comments from the city clerk since the last meeting. And so we will move on, and that concludes our agenda and the meeting. And without objection, we are adjourned until we go into this closed session. Thank you very much.